Somewhere between the years 2004 and 2008, my middle daughter was at Taylor University in college, and she introduced me to a man named Gary Haugen, who ran an organization called International Justice Mission. And Gary Haugen was a devout Christian who also happened to be a lawyer and also happened to work for the State Department. And he was, sometime in the 90s, doing work for the State Department in Rwanda, basically counting skeletons from the genocide. And in that moment, he questioned where God was. And I'll tell you more about that at the end. But he questioned where God was in the midst of all of this. But out of that, God called him to this ministry of rescuing people who were trafficked. So at the beginning, that majored on people who were trafficked for sexual exploitation, but then they quickly discovered it was much larger than that. And so as I began to investigate and pursue this, I came, and I don't know if anybody in this sanctuary or watching will remember this, but I came across a video by Christine Caine. So anybody remember this at all? Oh, good. Matt does. That's why we pay you to remember things like that. Christine Caine is she's a Greek person from Australia who lives in the United States and preaches all over. She's a powerful, powerful preacher. And she started this thing called A21, and I have no idea, I don't remember at all what the A or the 21 stands for. Anybody? Nope. So anyway, she started this Act 21? I don't know either. Anyway, she started this ministry in the same vein that Gary Haugen had started the International Justice Mission to work in trafficking. And I want to tell you, so Christine Caine, she can preach. She will light you up just like that when she's preaching. And like her famous words were, not on our watch. And she talked about the church being involved in combating human trafficking and slave trade. And that kind of got us fired up. And so we continued pursuing things. And it brought us to where we are now, where a part of our mission tithe. So every single Sunday, when we receive the offering that's here and that's also done online, 10% of our offering goes to mission work of various kinds. So a portion of that mission work that we support is an organization called the Set Free Movement. And the Set Free Movement is our Free Methodist activity that joins with what is a worldwide abolitionist movement. And so today we want to talk about that. We want to talk about our involvement with the Set Free Movement and how we as a church want to respond to evil in the world, right? Like, because we want to do that, right? We want to respond to evil in the world. Is it evil for a child or a woman or a man to be forced against their will to do labor that pays nothing or little and not to be able to get out of it, to feed the greed of other people? Is that evil or not? It's evil, and it's not something that God tolerates. So what I want to do is I want to read this passage from Isaiah 42, and then we're going to watch a video, and then I'm going to invite these women from our church to come on up. So in Isaiah 42, this is one of the servant passages. So it's one of the prominent prophecies about Christ, about the Messiah that Jesus fulfills. Like it starts out with the words, "Here is my servant in whom I delight, Here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one, in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations. He will bring fairness to the nations." So when God prophesies the coming of the Christ, the coming of the Messiah, Jesus, said this is part of his mission. This is a part of what he's about. And so here's one of my favorite verses in all of Scripture. It says, "He will not shout or cry out or raise his voice in the streets." Like he's not going to have a big parade. And then it says, a bruised reed he will not break, and a dimly burning wick he will not snuff out. So what we're going to tell you today is there's 40 million people around the world whose lights are burning out, who are bent reeds, and God's desire is for their welfare and to rescue them. And so when you jump down a few verses, it says this. This is what the Lord God says. He created the heavens and stretched them out. Okay, we've been talking about creation. He who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and all that comes out of it, who gives breath to its people. So there's not one person on the face of the earth to whom God didn't give breath. This God gives breath and life to those who walk in it. I, the Lord, have called you, that's the Christ and his people. I have called you in righteousness. I will take hold of your hand, I will keep you, and I will make you to be a covenant for the people and a light for the Gentiles, to open the eyes that are blind, to free captives from prison, and to release from the dungeon those who sit in darkness. So that's the mission that we're talking about today, joining the Messiah, joining the Christ as his people in freeing captives from the prison that they're in, and releasing from the dungeon those who sit in darkness. So we want to show you this opening video. Hit it, John.
Held by force, unable to leave, violence, shame, forced to do things no one would choose to do. An estimated 40 million of our brothers and sisters are trapped in modern-day slavery. Human trafficking is a business generating an estimated $150 billion a year. The products of misery are in our cupboards, closets, and kitchen. Modern slavery is in our homes, it's across the street, around the corner, and on the other side of the world. It's in small towns, big cities, it's in every country. What is she worth? What is he worth?
People are not commodities. Human beings are created in the image of God with dreams, potential, dignity. It is a great evil to reduce a human being to a thing to be used for profit and pleasure. But there is hope. Jesus came to set captives free. Jesus brings freedom, joy, hope, and healing. The Set Free movement is on mission with God to protect the vulnerable, to end modern slavery and create new futures. Partner with us today. With your help, we can continue to reunite trafficked children with their families. Speak out against injustice. Partner strong with national leaders. Be a voice of hope. Raise awareness in schools. Care for foster families and foster children. To set captives free, protect the vulnerable, and create new futures in Jesus' name. Thank you.
For you, Sarah Muir, Teresa Snyder, and Melissa Bergman, would you come up to the platform, please? So we're going to have a little bit of a panel conversation here, and hopefully we'll inspire you. So the first thing I want to ask here with these women is, hi Melissa. Hope you got prepped. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to share, kind of in an autobiographical way, why does this matter to you? Like, why do you care? So we'll just go in any order that you want. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I'm Sarah Muir. My husband Brett and I started fostering children about 11 years ago. And through foster care, we saw children entering our home who came from brokenness. They were coming from broken families, and having these children in our home showed us how vulnerable a person really can be. The attachments were not formed when they were babies. They didn't have resources financially. They were involved in a culture of drug use, and the effects that has on a young child really quickly became evident. So over the years, we've just trained and became educated and researched and advocated for these vulnerable children. That's where it started for me.
Okay, all right.
So I'm Melissa Bergman. I'm an attorney, and as part of my profession, I'm one of the assistant solicitors for Crawford County CYS. When I was in law school, I attended Regent University, and I, off the cuff, said to a friend, I will never do anything with juvenile dependency, which is the CYS foster care system.
You will never do anything what?
With the juvenile dependency system.
Oh, okay.
It was nothing I ever wanted to do, and I'm sure that God was just looking at me laughing, because God has a funny way of changing our lives. So over my work with the Crawford County Children and Youth System over the last 6 years, I have seen things that I cannot unsee. This is the best way I can describe it. I have seen families, I have seen children that have been through such heartache. Some of it has been because of being let down by the system. There are certain mandates that are in place that we have to follow, that if there were better helping hands in the community that could reach out to some of these people and could fill in some of those broken gaps, absolutely, I think a different path could have been had for these families and these kids. But we have to follow those mandates, and we're somewhat stuck. But if we can bridge some of those gaps, I think that it would be a tremendous help. One of the other things for me is that I didn't realize the prevalence of the trafficking, of the implications for the local community that a lot of this has. You think, oh, okay, yeah, it's happening in the third world countries. You don't think it's happening here in Titusville or in Meadville or in our local communities, but it is. It is so prevalent that Crawford County CYS, whenever we have a kid come back into care after a runaway episode or whenever they come into care initially, we actually have a sex trafficking tool that we use and ask a list of questions to determine if that child has been trafficked in any way. And it's unfortunate and sad, but more children than you would expect have been a victim of that. So for me, that's why I'm very passionate about this.
Okay.
I'm Teresa Snyder, and I've been involved with the Fair Trade Chocolate and Coffee since the latter 2000s. And I got involved because I wanted to help change the poverty in other countries besides the United States. And this is one way everybody could help.
So we're talking about, one of the words that you'll hear a lot is vulnerabilities. So we find ourselves in this place where more people than we realize are vulnerable, in danger of being trafficked in one way or another. So when we talk about traffic, so Melissa, like when you spoke, like there was this, like your what you would see would maybe major on sex trafficking.
Not so much labor for me,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of sex trafficking and a lot of trafficking associated with drug dealing and drug use and abuse.
Okay. Maybe one of the things we want you to get here is this understanding that 40 million slaves is both local and global. It includes all kinds of areas, right? So like I know initially when I started to think about these things and follow these things, I thought about the sex trade, and I thought about Thailand and Cambodia, and sex is a huge vacation package, and so I thought about things like that and how mainly girls, young girls, needed to be rescued from brothels, and thought about those kind of things that were. So don't misinterpret this word. It seemed like those were the more sensational things. But a huge portion of the trafficking is labor trafficking. You look like you wanted to say something. No. Okay.
I'll add when you're doing it.
Yeah. So a huge portion is labor trafficking, and like Teresa, can you talk a little bit about that? Like you mentioned about chocolate and coffee. So can you talk a little bit about global labor and how trafficking works in that area?
Sure. In the chocolate industry, a lot of times the big cocoa plantations, obviously they don't want to pay for labor if they can have child labor. And a lot of the poor people would sell their children on the promise of, we're going to give your child an education and help him make money and send back to you to better your family. Where what they're actually doing is when they get out of sight, they're enslaving that child and taking them and imprisoning them in their plantation to work, just crazy hours. And if they try to run away, they'll beat them, lock them in a whatever, and expect them to get up and work the next day. And the kids will be, if they see the kids, the vulnerable kids, they'll just outright kidnap them and take them and put them on plantations. So that's how they're getting a lot of the big plantations, getting a lot of their labor. We sell. Do you want me to talk about that fairly traded?
You can hold on to that for a
Okay.
second. Yep. Yeah, go ahead.
And I don't know, I'm not that educated on the coffee end of that, but I would imagine it works the same way.
Yeah. So Sarah, did you mention at first service about or did Teresa about this 7 cents?
In some of my reading I did, it looks like farmers are gaining 7 cents on the hour for farming coffee and chocolate in most cases. The majority of the world's coffee and chocolate comes from slave labor. And then I was just going to add on Teresa, that's what it looks like on a global level. On a local level, it can look more like families selling their children for drugs, pawning their children into sex trade for drugs and basic necessities. It can look like workers in the hospitality industry, in agriculture, in food industry, where people are brought against their will to work and paid just enough to keep them alive, but not enough that they can freely live.
Okay. Did you want to add on that?
That's completely accurate from what
Yeah.
I've seen
Yeah.
here locally.
Yep. Okay. So, so we want you to be aware, like, this is a big problem, and like I just want to ask, like as a congregation, like can we agree that something of this magnitude, the way it affects this many people adversely, like this would be on the heart of God, right? This would be on the heart of God, and whatever's on the heart of God, I want to be on our heart as well. So we have this problem, and part of the problem is we can't extricate ourselves from it easily. So one of the difficult things for me to hear, you heard the voice of Kevin Austin, and so we support Kevin Austin as a church. He's spoken on this platform before, but one of the things that was difficult for me to hear, and originally heard it from him, is that the product of underage work or underpaid work and slave labor, Oh, I love being able to use this word. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. You can't get away from it. It's in your clothing that we have on this morning. It's in this computer that Matt's using to monitor our service. It's in our kitchen cupboards. We're going to drink it. We're going to bake with it. Again, it's just very, yeah, go ahead.
If you go on the Set Free Movement website, there is actually a tool, an interactive tool that you can put in your information of how old you are, how many kids you are, how many devices you have in your house, what you have in your cupboards, what you're wearing, and it tells you how many slaves you have working for you. So I did that last night. I did it, and even being the person that's up here talking about it, the results were I have 90 slaves working for me.
Yeah. I hate that. Cut that from the recording there. Yeah, so those are...
We're here to change that.
Yeah, so those are... Yeah, right. So those are hard things to hear, and maybe you're skeptical. But here's the thing, like, what if it's only half true? Like, think about that for a second. Like, what about if everything that we're saying up here is only half true? Oh, well, good. Then Sarah only has 45 slaves working for her. I couldn't get through the app even. Like, I couldn't finish it. Okay, so all of that isn't to produce guilt. It's to produce movement. So I love this language that we use, move in the direction of freedom. So, like, is there anything, like, if it's ubiquitous, if it's everywhere, if we can't get away from it, what can we do? Can we make any progress? And the answer to that is yes. Like, we can move in the direction of freedom. We can make choices and we can do things that move us a certain direction. And so that's what we want to hit on. We want to talk about the things that we can do as individual Christians and also as a church body. So, for example, in a moment, Sarah's going to talk. What do we actually call the team? Is it a team? Is that the word? A set-free team? Yeah. So at camp meeting this year, if any of you went to camp meeting, Kevin Austin was there. He was teaching for like 5 or 6 days, and in the morning, and Sarah was at all those sessions, and I was at most of them. And at the end, she turned to me and she said, what do we have to do something. We have to do something about this. And I'm like, well, or where do we start? Well, we already kind of have. Like, we do something about this. And so I want Teresa now to talk a little bit about our fair trade cabinet. So we have this fair trade cabinet. It's in the back in the lobby on the left. It was very interesting to me. This is a lesson in how things become invisible when they've been around for a long time. So somebody was asking me about our coffee that we drink on Sundays, that we serve. And I said, oh, you can buy that at the church. Where? In our fair trade cabinet. Well, where's that at? It's like, are you kidding? Like, you're probably leaning against it every Sunday morning. So Teresa, talk a little bit about our fair trade cabinet.
Okay. I'll start with the coffee. We sell Rwandan coffee, and it's to help people recover from the genocide that happened there, to help these people earn a fair living wage. And like Pastor said, the coffee you drink in the morning in the lobby is just that. And so we drinking coffee and doing good. That's a way everybody can help. You don't have to have a special talent. All you have to do is walk up to the cupboard and take it and put your money in the box.
But does it have to be so expensive?
Yes, it does, because...
How expensive is it, Teresa?
At 13, the beans are 14. I think the ground is 13. But if you don't pay that, then the people aren't making a living wage. You can find coffee, I think, for $5 a bag. But the labor that went into that, you're not helping anybody but continuing to help enslave someone. So you do pay more, because we're helping these people earn that living wage.
So how much do we make on that?
We make nothing. Actually, we pay. This is not a fundraising project that we have. You buy it for exactly what we pay for it, and we don't add any shipping or handling. So actually, you're getting the deal. So you're doing good and getting a deal.
And it's delicious.
Yes. So there, that's the coffee. There's a store up in Erie, the Whole Foods outlet, or Whole Foods, something or other. It's over on 26th Street. They sell fair trade coffee and chocolate. And if you look in stores, you can find fair trade stuff. Like in your craft stores, I've noticed they're selling the Divine chocolate. It's more expensive than what we sell it for. But again, we're helping people earn a living wage. Most of your Green Mountain coffee in the stores is fair trade. All you have to do is look on the front of the label. It'll have the fair trade logo.
And there are actually other logos you can look at as well.
Right.
So like some of you might be very sophisticated in this and know that sometimes some products get the fair trade label unfairly. So you can find labels that talk about single source. I think that might be the language that they use. So there are other avenues that you can go, but you do have to look. You have to pay attention.
And don't be confused, because just because they have some of these logos doesn't mean they're fair trade. Just because it says organic, most of the time it is not fairly traded. And I was going to say something about the chocolate and I forgot.
Sorry.
Pardon me?
Sorry.
So that's one way that all of us can help, is to buy the fairly traded products. Oh, Ben & Jerry's ice cream. They started out with just fair traded products in the ice cream, in the actual ice cream. Now all their additives, their chocolate pieces, fudge, whatever, that's all fairly traded now. And just a side note, Ben & Jerry's and Green Mountain come from the same place in Stowe, Vermont.
All right. So also in the fair trade cabinet, just so you know, so the coffee's on the chocolate's on the left, the coffee's on the right. In the middle, we have something called seed products. Seed products are products that are made what do we call that?
Micro communities?
Micro communities. So they make products, and a lot of times it involves women, but it also could involve men. So they make products that then Seed helps market and sell. And so what that does is it keeps these persons in a less vulnerable place. So they're making products and selling goods, and that's helping to support them. If they have an income, then they're not vulnerable. So seed products that you can get a seed catalog, you can go online and look, but that helps a great deal. All right, so things that we can do. When you leave today, I'm going to be asking the greeters to be passing out a paper like this. It's called 12 Ways You Can Join the Movement. You can pick that up. You can pick up information on the Fair Trade Cabinet as well. Sarah is going to talk to us about having a set-free team in our community. So to lead into that, we're going to show you a second video. So if you want to hit that, John.
Human trafficking is one of the largest and fastest growing criminal industries in the world today, generating around $150 billion each year.
It enslaves an estimated 40 million women, children, and men who are forced to do things they don't want to do.
But slavery is a symptom of a deeper problem.
These communities are broken.
Relationships are fragmented.
Values are distorted.
Systems are unjust.
That's the bad news. The good news
is that we are not powerless. The Set Free movement seeks to reduce the vulnerabilities that lead to exploitation through community-based action.
We are made up of more than 30 teams across the U.S. and around the world who work collaboratively
to bring healing to their own neighborhoods.
Our unique model looks different in every context.
Our teams in Southeast Asia are mobilizing informed, compassionate churches and communities that are equipped to intervene in abuse.
Our teams in Europe are reducing the vulnerabilities faced by ethnic minorities, at-risk children, and people who are unemployed.
After years of experimenting with different strategies, one of our teams in Illinois opened a restoration home, doubling the number of beds that were available to female survivors of human trafficking in the state at the time.
One of our California team leaders trains more than 1,000 youth each year on protecting themselves and their peers from human trafficking.
Several teams are intervening in the foster care to human trafficking pipeline by investing in youth in foster care and strengthening the foster care system. You have a place in this movement too.
You already belong to a community in need. You already have the gifts and resources to contribute.
Learning more about the issue,
Joining or starting a set-free team,
or investing as a monthly donor are a few ways you can get started as an agent of hope and healing.
You are only one, but together we are a movement in the direction of freedom.
All right. Sarah, talk about set-free teams.
Sure. So for the last decade or so, I've been working with these vulnerable children in my home. And this summer, I had the opportunity to meet up with Kevin Austin at Pleasantville Camp and attend his trainings. And a lot of things just clicked for me. What I was seeing in my home was happening all over the world. And he was putting words to it and language to it that made sense to me. His language is, do what makes sense in your community. So what I'm seeing, and I'm sure what the two of you are seeing, is that, like Kevin said, human trafficking is a symptom of a larger problem. And the larger problem is brokenness. It's broken communities, broken families, broken people. And these kids that are entering our communities through foster care specifically are entering from a broken past. And they haven't formed attachments and relationships with the people who are supposed to love them most. So when they come into our families and our churches and our communities, they're learning how to be human, learning how to interact and have relationships. So that's what makes sense for me, and I think that's what makes sense for our community, is to try to reach the young children, the young families who are vulnerable and who are at risk for some of these bigger problems. So Pastor Tim and I attended the onboarding for Set Free Team Leadership, and we can now say that we're one of those 30-some international teams that will be working with this organization. There's also a team out of Oil City that has joined us, so we're hopeful that in our communities, in our region, that we can really make a difference and bring the love of God to the people who need it most.
Okay. Yeah, and if you're interested perhaps in learning about what it might be to be a part of that team and how that would work, you can just mark that notation on your connection card and we'll follow up with that. All right, any final word, Teresa?
Yes, I just want to say that in the sex tourism business, Super Bowl Sunday is the biggest day in the United States. And last year they rescued 32 children. So if you watch the news post-Super Bowl, I'm sure you'll see that there's been more children rescued.
Yeah. Last word, Melissa.
If anyone here is interested in maybe becoming a foster parent or ways that you can help to support those that are in foster care, you are more than welcome to reach out to myself or Sarah, who will probably put you in touch with me, which is fine. But I am more than happy to have a discussion with anyone who might be interested in any of that, to let you guys know just some ways that you can help pretty simple ways. It's not a huge time commitment necessarily if you're just looking to help support. Foster care, though, is a huge commitment. So just be prepared for that as a huge commitment, is that if that is something you are interested in. Thanks.
Okay. Sarah, any final words?
I just appreciate being a part of a church community that this matters to and that is supportive of the issues here.
Okay. All right. Let's give these Azers a really good hand.